Welcome to An Awful World, but not awful like you think.
This is the show where we discuss whether we would have discovered important advances in a world exclusively full of Haylies and Libbys. I'm Haylie.
And I'm Libby. And today we're talking about celebrities. When you're a celebrity. Anyway, that's a song. It's called Celebrity. I know you were dying to hear me sing a country song on the podcast, so you're welcome. And that is our episode on celebrities. No, I'm kidding. Yay, celebrities. This is such a fun topic.
It is.
I have long been fascinated with celebrities for a variety of reasons, and we'll talk about it. But this is something also that is not hella old.
No.
It's very, very recent. Like, for sure, it doesn't go back. Like, I mean, I guess it just depends on what you consider a celebrity to be. But early on, it was mostly like in ancient times, they had quote unquote celebrities, but they were really more like war heroes or like performers or something like that.
Yeah, like philosophers and athletes.
Yes,
and
but they were
politicians,
popular or like celebrities in very small regions of the world, because obviously people didn't really travel that far, right? Mm-hmm. Unless it was for war. See the vacation episode if you want to know more about traveling. Mm-hmm. But so like emperors, philosophers, generals, like, you know, revered military officials, that sort of thing.
Right.
And some of those people became like more widespread celebrities because their faces were put on money.
Right.
So like Caesar was on a coin, like whatever. Or, you know, people would talk about like Aristotle's teachings, and then that would just like kind of get like written down and, you know, whatever.
Right.
And so they would become sort of famous in that sense, but not like world renowned, you know, quite like they are now. In the Middle Ages, it was really more tied to royalty. So nobility is going to be the most famous, but also like religious figures like the Pope or, you know, whatever.
Which all makes sense because, again, like you don't have like the technology that we have now. No. So like the only names that are going to be household names besides like the people that you know are going to be like heads of state, you know, religious figures, people trying to take over the world. Right. You know,
exactly.
Like these are the names that you've heard around the street before the newspaper existed.
Exactly. Which is what I was just about to say, that in medieval times, there was no mass media and there was really no media in general.
Right.
Because the printing press hadn't been invented until I think the 16th century, probably like sometime in the 1500s, I think it was printed. So. And that really changed a lot of things because then, you know, we could write these stories about what was going on and who these people were and have sketches of what they look like and that sort of thing that would kind of make it easier to know about, you know, who these people are. But like, I also just can't imagine just like, you know, not knowing what the Pope looked like, you know, in 1500 and like you just pass him on the street and you just don't know that's the Pope. Because that's just like so not the world we live in now.
But don't you think they would be like, oh, that's the Pope. Look at his really big hat.
I mean, yes. But like, just think of like a different example, like a famous general, right? Like you wouldn't know who that, if they just passed you on the street, which I just think is crazy.
Yeah, that's
which
true.
Is why like celebrity in its true sense is very, very young concept.
Yes. You know, what's funny though, is Queen Elizabeth, because as she got older, she just started wearing those like very bright matching outfits.
Yes.
Because she was like, I just look like any other little old lady. Yeah. And even though I'm on the money and even though you've seen me on TV, like you can't find me if I don't look like this.
That's true.
Because I'm just a little old lady now. And so she started wearing like lime green and yellow and hot pink, but like always like a hat and a bag and like the matching like dress jacket combo
like
thing.
Tweed.
Yes, because she was like, I am a celebrity,
I guess,
but nobody can find me.
I know. I think that's funny.
Yeah. So I'm like, even with TV, she's like, look, I'm the queen.
It's me. So, by the Renaissance, I feel like I've talked about the Renaissance so much lately, but artists, like, they became very, like, world renowned because of their uptake and interest in art. So, like, people like Shakespeare or like Leonardo da Vinci, like they start to become sort of celebrities because they're known for these, famous works. And like even today, we know Shakespeare and Leonardo da Vinci. Like people go to the Louvre, they want to see the Mona Lisa.
Yes.
That's basically it. And well, I think Venus de Milo's in the Louvre too, isn't it?
I don't really remember.
With no arms. Anyway.
Oh, yes,
yeah,
it is. I have a picture with that.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's in the Louvre too.
It is.
So then the printing press like comes around right as the Renaissance is kind of happening, and the press is able to spread like news and achievements of people and all these things that make them much more like memorable celebrity. Everybody kind of knows about this person, people in their mind. But the 1800s is really where we move towards the idea of like a modern celebrity.
Yes.
There was a large public following for like theater stars. Very great example is John Wilkes Booth, who was an actor who also killed President Lincoln. Oops. Whoopsies. He, people like him had a huge following because, they would like tour, theaters. And again, it's kind of still like a small area, but also like having newspapers and being like, this week starring John Wilkes Booth, we're doing a production of Carousel, but it wasn't Carousel because it didn't exist then. But you know what I mean?
Right.
But then we have photography. Photography really changes a lot of things too, because photography evolves into film.
Right.
And that is where it really just takes off.
Yes.
And like what we consider to be a celebrity comes to life. And then we get like people really interested in celebrities' lives.
Yes.
And then we get like gossip columns and like Tiger Beat magazine and all this stuff,
Yes.
So the first person to be considered like the true celebrity, I think this is so funny because I don't know who it is. Her name was Sarah Bernhardt.
Yes. She was a French actress.
She sure was. And she was sort of like the first the first person to kind of craft her like public persona through like manipulation, not like bad manipulation, just like she crafted a persona through the press that she had a public persona.
Yes.
That maybe wasn't necessarily exactly what she was like in real life, but like she was the first to sort of create that and use, media and photography and all these things to become this, public figure.
Yeah.
In a new way.
I was reading about her and how she it really worked for her because she was coming in to her own like at the same time as like the rise of these kinds of technologies.
Right.
So she could very much use them to like be famous in that way. But also then she ended up with like stalkers and things like that.
Modern problems.
Yes. And but she was like really well known for like bending gender norms and being
like weird beauty themes and things.
Yes. Yeah. And which is like cool because she gets to do all of that because people are watching.
Right.
And so she gets to like make a statement that way and stuff. And then people are like, wow, you can have influence that
absolutely.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, really changed the game.
100%.
You think about the number of people today. For heaven's sakes, we have PR people for every single celebrity.
Yeah.
That's in charge of keeping their public image, in sort of within the narrative that they want it to be in. And
then there are people who
crazy.
Should have PR.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they do.
Or people who shouldn't have Twitter, maybe. That's a thought. But yeah, I think celebrities are so fascinating, and it's like I would never want to be a celebrity. I've considered this so many times. I think that it would be truly awful to not even be able to step outside of your home without someone taking a picture of you or following you or trying to talk to you.
Or screaming at you.
Yes. And all that is a result of media.
Yes.
Because of things like that, like just the public interest in these people's lives. But something I think is very funny is that when you think of celebrities, you almost always think of people who are involved in the arts. So they are actors and actresses. They are singers. That's really, I mean, those are the big two, right? Like, and like kind of with like authors, you know, a little bit, but like certainly like some of your favorite authors, like I wouldn't know Taylor Jenkins Reid if I passed her in the street.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a little more anonymity there. But, you know, 500 years before today, actors were considered to be like, you know, kind of like lowly people. Just like, ooh, you know? Like they did not like actors in like medieval times. They're just like, ooh.
Which, honestly though... Have you met a theater kid? Like,
no, they're obnoxious.
Checks out.
I mean, I get it.
Yes.
I get it completely.
Yeah. Like, but in the society that we have today, they are the best people to be celebrities because they have such big personalities that are like so different than, like when you're doing interviews and things like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, could you imagine going on like, Jimmy Fallon, and you know it's just you, and he's like, "Oh, so what are you up to lately?"
Asking you questions,
and you're like,
just working."
You
know, read a couple books,
got engaged.
Yeah,
you know, like, and, you know, you might be like, "Oh, like funny story," like,
yeah,
you know, my niece said this when we got engaged, and it was really funny, or blah blah blah. Like, you could come up with funny stories, but like, would you be so over the top?
No,
and you know,
I would be like, "This is weird."
Yeah, like you have to be prepped for that and those kind of things.
Well, and I do think that a lot of people that are famous now understand that.
Yes.
They understand going into it what kind of life they're signing up for. And I've always really respected Taylor Swift on this front because I would classify her as the most famous person in the world today.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Maybe ever. I don't know. Maybe ever. I have no idea, but she's definitely the most famous person in the world today.
Yes.
And she has always, you know, people have always asked her questions about, you know, being a celebrity and not really having like, you know, some of your private life and all of that. And she has always been very gracious about it and been like, I knew what I was getting into. Like, this is what I wanted. This is literally what I wanted so that I could make my music and like share it with the world. And I've always really respected that because there are some people, like, don't get me wrong, I really like Chappell Roan.
Yes.
But, you know, some of the stuff that she's done, I'm like, I get it from a personal level, but from a professional level, you had to know that this is like what happens when you become famous.
Right.
And you have to figure out how to deal with that.
But also it's one of those things where like, I think Taylor Swift went into this knowing because she's so calculated.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way, but
she's a mastermind.
Exactly. But like with that, she has been working on this since she was young. Like she got famous very young.
Yes.
And she, I think, is one of those people who was like, I want to be the most famous person in the world. I want my songs to be
everywhere.
I want them to be this powerful. Where I feel like Chappell Roan is one of those people who was like, I would like to make it.
Music. Yeah. You know, she kind of stumbled into it.
Yes. Like I think she was very much like, I want to be making music and I want to have a following, but I don't think that she ever thought she would be this level of big.
Yeah.
And especially like once she got famous, it was like fast.
It was,
you know?
yeah.
So
it was sort of like overnight.
Yeah. So I don't think that she was like, this isn't what I signed up for, you know, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think even Taylor Swift should be, just because she's the most famous person in the world, she should not be hounded the way that she is.
Absolutely.
And she should have time to be private and you know, like she should not be able to, like, I mean, she should be able to walk down the street without people hounding her,
stopping her and yelling at her and wanting pictures and wanting autographs and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yes. Like I think if I passed Taylor Swift on the street, I would be like, hi. Yeah. I'd be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Hi, Taylor Swift.
Right. And then
how's your day? And then I just kind of like go on.
Yeah. Like have a good one.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that, I've thought about this so much, especially with Taylor over the last, 2 years, since the Eras Tour started, is that people take this idea of celebrity and they blow it so out of proportion. And I think I've told you about this before, that there's this TikToker who likes to talk about what's called parasocial relationships, which essentially is just a one-sided relationship where one person does not know the other person.
Yes.
So that is almost always our relationship, quote unquote, relationship with celebrities. But I've seen it the most with Taylor Swift, this unhealthy belief about that these people think that they know her, right? So, when something happens in her life or she releases a song about something and people listen to it and they're automatically like, well, it's about this person. And this is exactly what happened. They write their own narrative for what happened in her life.
Oh, absolutely.
And like some stuff, I'm like, I see people be like, well, Taylor would never do that. I'm like, well, you don't know what Taylor would do because you don't know her.
Right.
Like, I don't know her either.
Right.
I don't know what she would do.
No.
I love her music. I am pretty sure I would love her as a person, but I don't know because I don't know her. I don't know her in the way that that a lot of people think that they know her, because that is her public persona.
Right.
Who she is behind closed doors, I have no idea.
Exactly.
And like, there was just some kind of beauty in that. Like, being able to share what you wanted to share with the world. Like, I'm thinking of like, poets or authors.
Yes.
Maybe even now, yes, but also like 100 years ago, let's say. Like, you have such greater opportunity to be able to share what you want to share without your like life being thrust in the spotlight.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, and I think a lot of like, today we have so much like that we see of celebrities, because it's not just that we see their music and then we see, or their movies, and then we see the videos and, like the music videos and whatever. But then there are late night interviews, and then there are YouTube interviews, and then there are TikTok interviews, and then they have their own TikTok and their own Instagram and their own Facebook, and then they have podcasts, and then they have this and they have that, and they are so in the limelight 24/7.
Yeah.
And so people are like, well, I'm allowed to call them fat. I'm allowed to call them ugly. I'm allowed to say that they're annoying.
Right.
And I'm like, well, you can think that on your own.
It doesn't really give you a permit to like do that.
And they're like, well, they're open to this scrutiny because they put themselves in the limelight. And I'm like, no, not really.
Yeah.
And I very much think about like growing up in the early 2000s, and especially like Britney Spears, how she was absolutely hounded to the point where she literally
snapped.
Yes, she literally
understandably
broke. And the older I get, the more I find it so reasonable. And that I'm like, I would
response.
Yes, I would have broken so much earlier than she did.
And in her book, you really get you're like, I get it.
Yes. And, there are videos of her where she is surrounded, like her car, and she is on her own. Just trying to drive. And so she runs over someone's foot after she has asked them several times to move.
Right.
And then they want to sue her for that. And she's like, I asked you to move.
Right.
I can't see.
I can't move.
Like, I can't, you have trapped me in my own vehicle.
Right.
And then.
God, that gives me anxiety.
I know. And I'm like that. And then back then we're just like, well, she deserves it because she's a celebrity. And I'm like,
literally does not. No. She was a child.
Yes, she was literally a child whose parent, like, who was like, I like to sing.
Yeah.
And I'm.
And did Mickey Mouse Club, though.
Yes. So she did something very reasonable for her age, Mickey Mouse Club. And then from there was asked if she wanted to be a singer. And she said yes. And she likes to sing. That's what she's good at. There's no difference in her saying, I like to sing. This is what I want to do with my life. To me saying, I like to read and argue and,
because I'm a human person.
And so I want to be an attorney. There's literally no difference in these things.
Right.
So why, for me as an attorney, am I allowed to have right to privacy, but because she sings, she's not?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and I don't know where that ideology comes from, other than once celebrities became a thing, then people became interested in their personal lives. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's such an interesting like dichotomy that in a way you have to think about it is that, again, you don't know these people, but these people are also people, right? So they are going to disappoint you. They're going to do things that you don't like. There will never be a celebrity that you will 100% agree with all the time.
Right.
That just won't happen because they're people. And it's one of those things like, you know, Brian and I always talk about like sort of separating the art from the artist and like how I wish we could do that more often. You know, plain example is I fuck with Usher. I love Usher's music, right?
Yeah.
But when all that shit went down last year, I was like, oh man, this is disappointing, right? Or like Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I love his music, but he did some really bad shit to people, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like the fact that we have to be able to separate those things because everything would be ruined if we couldn't, right? You get to be able to say, I enjoy this person's music. Period. End of story. I don't endorse what they do. I don't, you know, whatever. Like John Mayer, I support your music. I think you're kind of a shitty person.
Right.
But damn, do I love your music.
Right.
You know, so I think so many people have gotten away from that. And that's how we've like kind of gotten into this whole cancel culture thing. And don't get me wrong, some people deserve to be canceled.
100%. But I also think that it depends. I think there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
You know, like somebody who said something when they were young but they've learned, they've grown, you know, things like that. I think that you need to recognize that they've learned and they've grown and they made a mistake because you've made a mistake too, like when you're younger.
It's just not everybody was watching you.
Exactly. It just wasn't publicized the same way. So I think that you need to kind of let things go sometimes. But then there are also people who are really, really bad people and you really can't fuck with that anymore, you know, but then it's also, there are things like, is R. Kelly the one who sings Remix to Ignition?
Yes.
Okay. So
also a terrible person,
but I love Remix to Ignition.
I mean, who doesn't?
You know, but the cool thing about this is, all the money made from like streaming or on the radio for R. Kelly's music now goes to his victims.
Good.
So because it was like in, you know, some lawsuit or whatever.
Yeah.
So now it goes to that. And I'm like, that is such a good way to use that because then you still get to enjoy the music.
Right.
Hate the artist. Support the victims.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's how we should be doing cancel culture.
Right.
He doesn't make music anymore because he sucks
he's
and no
done
one
some really bad shit.
Yes, and no one wants to work with him and they shouldn't work with him because he's done really bad things.
Right.
But the music that he has made, there were other people who worked on that who probably didn't know that he was such a bad guy. So it still is a way to like support those people in what they did. And it supports the victims, the people who he hurt.
Yeah.
And you still get to enjoy a song that like came out at a time and you liked because you didn't know he was a bad person when it came out.
Well, and it's like nostalgic, you know? Right? Like anytime I hear that song, I'm like, ooh, it's 2005.
Exactly.
And I'm burning mixed CDs in my room on my little laptop, chatting with my friends on AIM.
Exactly.
You know, all that.
And you're like, are you going to the middle school dance?
Right.
You know?
Like, yeah. So, yeah, I just think that, like, we've ruined some things for ourselves in that sense.
Yes.
Because we refuse to separate them.
Yes.
And everybody just, you know, anybody who makes any kind of art is automatically thrust into this spotlight.
Yes.
And I sort of just hate that for them and for us because they're bound to fuck up at some point.
Yes.
Because they're people. Right.
But again, there are levels to fuck ups. You know?
I'm not saying like, you know, like Harvey Weinstein. There's no arguing about.
No, like he should be done forever.
Yes. He should be canceled. That's fine.
But then there are people who like right now are supporting bad people and who are doing very terrible things in our country. And I'm like, I think you should be canceled for that because you have so much influence.
Yeah.
That
you have a platform that other people don't have.
Yes. And also, if you support this person, you probably were on the wrong side would have been on the wrong side of history for World War II. And let's just think about it that way.
Right.
And you know what? You know, who should have been canceled? Hitler and all of his little supporters. Yes. So let's just, you know, I think that there are, and you know, people can disagree with me and they can be like, I want to support so-and-so and all of that.
Go
and I'm like,
it.
okay, then you
do
can.
you. Yeah.
But then I don't have to be a part of that.
Right.
And I don't have to deal with that.
Right.
You know, like it is what it is. But I just think that like, I feel like celebrityism kind of came around with, you know, obviously with technology and stuff, but at some point it was kind of like, oh, well, musicians and movie stars and things like that, they have money. So then we were kind of like, you know, they're all just living over in Hollywood.
Their lives must be so interesting.
Yes. And like, God, what do they do in their free time with all that money and fame and, you know, all of that? Like, well,
there's a lot of intrigue.
Yes. So then interviews became a big thing. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, celebrities, they're just like us. Right. They pick up their laundry.
They are in some ways.
And then they are
in many ways not. Yes. Yeah. I mean,
and it's very much like, wow, they fly around and they do all these cool things. But then it's also like, well, we're on recession number 5 here. Right. And no one can afford eggs. So maybe you shouldn't be flying around in your jet.
In your private jet.
You know? So it's like, you can't win them. You can't lose.
No,
you know,
no. I really worry about our society though, and their obsession with the celebrity.
Yes.
I think it's gotten so out of hand, and it's hard on the celebrities too, because again, they are people. Mm-hmm. They are people just like you and me. And you think about some of these celebrities, I'm sure struggle with like anxiety.
Yeah.
And I'm not a famous person and I struggle with anxiety. Mm-hmm. I just get anxious for no reason. Mm-hmm. Now imagine being swarmed by people every time you step out your front door. Yeah. Or you know that people are going to be taking your picture, or they're going to be talking about you on TV or in magazines and criticizing you and all this stuff. Like, it's just really harmful. And I think that people, you know, they also like to very much hide behind the internet. It's easy for people to do that. And, you know, make insane comments about people or make death threats or, you know, and then talk about stalkers. Like, you know, when we become this fascinated with somebody's life for no good reason other than that they make music that we like, it does something to our brains.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've just never seen it like on the scale of Taylor Swift. And just the last 2 years, it has been crazy.
It's been insane.
It's nuts. Like, you can't, it's everybody in the world wants to.
Even people who always hated Taylor Swift all of a sudden are like, I love Taylor Swift.
I know.
And I understand that like at some point you are kind of like, maybe you didn't really love her music, or you didn't really pay attention to her music and you were just kind of like, oh, she's famous and a pop star and whatever. But then you saw like what the Eras Tour is and you're like, wow, mad respect.
Yes.
And that I get. And like,
me too.
You know, I was someone who was very much like, I like some of her music. I like some albums more than others.
Yeah.
And then when I like saw the stuff, I was like, wow, mad respect. Like that's a big undertaking, you know, like every single day to do those kind of things, and how she trained for it and all of these things. It's just fascinating.
It is.
You know, all of that. And I was like, I would go, but I wasn't going to like,
you know,
pay thousands of dollars to sit
and the fact
up in the nosebleeds and that kind of stuff.
People did that.
And people did.
Is scary.
And people did it multiple times.
Yes.
And then you pay for the outfits and you do all this stuff.
Yes.
And I was like, I would go see her if I were to have gotten tickets at like a reasonable price.
Yeah.
But I was also like, you know, even now I'm like, I like some of her stuff.
Yeah.
Not all of her stuff. Not all of it's all for me. And that's fine.
That is fine.
And there are other people that I would spend my money on to go see, like Britney Spears. And I'm like, and Britney Spears is not for everyone. And that is fine.
Right.
You know? But also, like, I just don't think there's anybody that I am that obsessed with.
No. And so I've thought a lot about this because I, as you know, have been a Taylor Swift fan for a very long time.
Yeah. From the beginning.
I, you know, used to love country music, and that's where Taylor started out. And I would get up every morning before school and make breakfast, and I would sit and watch the country music countdown, like
the
music videos. So I can remember seeing the Tim McGraw music video and being like, I like this girl.
Yeah.
And then Picture to Burn came out and I was like, oh my, I mean, she's fantastic. I gotta have the CD, right? So, all from the beginning. But I was 11 years old, I think, when the first album of hers came out. She's 5 years older than me. So, I was very enamored with her, very obsessed with her through high school. My walls in my room were covered with Taylor Swift posters, and I had all the merch and all, anything Taylor Swift. I wanted it and I had it. And I grew up.
Yeah.
And I grew out of that. I still love Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Still went and saw her twice on the Eras Tour. Would do it again in a heartbeat. But I'm 30 years old. And so I don't necessarily think it's that healthy for me to be this obsessed with somebody else's life.
No.
And that's just my personal feelings. You do you, whatever. Except I just warn you to be careful of, thinking that these people are getting so wrapped up in their life that you forget to live your own life.
Yes.
And that you're here too. And there's more to life than just following, what one single person is doing every day. Like,
right.
I don't care.
Right.
I really don't. Like,
Right.
And I know that some people will be like, oh, that's so shitty. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's fine. You're allowed to think that. But I don't care about what she's doing every second of every day.
Right. Well, and it's like I follow Britney Spears on Instagram, and when we were in law school was the Free Britney movement, and I remember watching the live video of when she was supposed to announce her next residency, and I remember having it up just because she was supposed to announce it, and we were in law school, and so I was like, this might be my chance to go see her. Yeah. Because I was supposed to see her when I was 5 and I wasn't able to. Whatever. But not that I'm still bitter about it, Dad.
Not at all.
And so she was supposed to announce her next residency, and I was telling Ty, I want to know when it is because I want to go see her.
Yeah.
And I was like, this will probably be the last chance, kind of a thing. And she walked out of this limo, walked by everybody, walked right off the stage and back into another limo.
Yep.
And everyone was awesome. Like, the fuck just happened?
Yep.
And then after that, everyone was like, she's being held captive.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe she is. But also, I do not know her life.
Yep.
And nobody else does either.
Nope.
She's become very private, and she deserves to be private.
Yeah.
And even
That's your
now,
prerogative.
even now she has her book, and I love to follow her Instagram because it is a roller coaster.
It is. It absolutely is.
It is fascinating. And to me, I think that she is the most sane, person out there.
Yeah.
People think that she is absolutely crazy. And I'm like,
read the book.
Here is the thing. If you read her book and if you were to have gone through everything that she went through, you would be the same way. You would probably be worse off. If I had gone through what she had gone through, I would probably not be alive today.
And even some of the things about, everything that went down between her and Justin Timberlake, right? And then he has the nerve to get on the radio and put her on blast.
Yes.
And I can't even imagine. And you're 18 years old.
Yeah.
That's no.
Right.
You wouldn't mentally
your
recover from that.
Years.
Yeah.
So then, and she was just made out to be the villain. And that was prior to being held captive.
Right.
And pretty much used as slave labor.
Yeah.
And so, she's still in really great shape.
Yeah.
And she's in her 40s now. And so I'm like, all she does is dance around half naked. And I'm like, you know what?
Whatever.
Honestly, so would I.
Yeah.
If that's what kept me sane, is being I'm still in really good shape and I still feel good about myself and my body. And I'm going to post it for the world to see. But from the privacy of my own home or my vacation home.
Go for it.
Go for it. Who does that hurt?
Nobody.
So you think she's crazy. Who cares?
Right.
I'm like, you don't know her life really or what she's still going through.
Well, we don't really need all this social commentary on it either.
Right. So maybe cut her some slack because
they
honestly,
never do though.
If you had gone through what she went through, you would probably be doing that or worse.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm like, I would be dead, honestly.
Yeah, I would be addicted to drugs, I'm sure.
Yes.
or something.
But and so I'm kind of just like, let the people do what they want. If they want to dance around naked on Instagram, let them. If they want to take a break in between doing movies to like hang out and just like be private, let them.
It always cracks me up though when the media acts so surprised about artistic people being artistic. Like,
yes.
Like Lady Gaga, for instance. Lady Gaga is a phenomenal artist.
Yes.
The music she makes is fantastic.
It is.
She's a good actress. You know, there's all these things to Lady Gaga. But, you know, the Met Gala, you know, when she shows up covered in slabs of meat.
Yes.
And they're
like coming out of an egg.
Yes. They're like, oh my God, she's so weird. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're surprised that an artist is being artistic and weird.
And like pushing the limits of like,
why are
our societal norms.
Right. And just, and obviously like, it goes so much with, you know, women too.
Yes.
There is so much more social commentary on women.
Oh, 100%.
You know, Taylor Swift gets called a serial dater, but Leonardo DiCaprio, nobody says anything about him being a serial dater and also a serial dater of 25-year-olds.
Yes, which I literally asked you the other day. I was like, how do you stand in a room with Leonardo DiCaprio as any human being and the first thing out of your mouth isn't, hey man,
stop.
Don't you think you should date someone your own age? Like,
but
you would be so surprised at how much you may have in common with a woman who has lived life the same amount of time that you have.
No, how dare you criticize him like that?
I know, but I'm also just like, even someone, myself, I am almost 32. I think I would rather kill myself
than date a 25-year-old man.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God.
It takes men so long to not be stupid.
I know. And I mean, I'm sure that that's what it is like, women are smarter, faster.
Yes.
But instead of being like, hey, men, catch up, we just like baby them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. But I hate the entire like rhetoric surrounding women. And like, honestly, that's obviously the point she makes in The Man, the song, you know, that.
Which we always sing when we're angry.
Oh, yes. Men get to do all of these things and not be, you know, called names for it. Like, but women do the same thing and we are crucified for it. And that's just especially true for celebrities, I think.
Yes.
But I also, you know, kind of want to talk about, and I think we've talked about this before, like the impact of social media. Because social media has, again, changed the world of celebrity.
Oh,
because now you get to see every day into their lives from their perspective, if they so choose to share it with you. But it's also like they're collecting social capital.
Yes.
In the terms of followers and, you know, how many people are tuning into their live streams and all this shit. And again, I think that's really, really hurt our psyche as humans, and that we just need to like not spend so much time worrying about what other people are doing with their lives.
Yeah.
Because it's boring.
Well, and like now, so child stars have been around forever.
Yeah.
And it's always bad for their psyche. I mean,
even
look at Judy Garland, Shirley Temple, you know, Corey Feldman.
Terrible childhoods.
Like more times than not, look at a child star and how like great they did and how cute they were as kids, and look at them now. Amanda Bynes.
Yep.
Like, and again, somebody who people are like, she's insane. And I'm like, is she? Or is she just like reacting the way anybody would to living the life that she did? You know? But like now people are recording their kids at home, going through everyday life, and like Ruby Frankie, and she's like, you know, tying her kids up and keeping them malnourished and making them like do the same video take over and over and over again before they can have dinner and things like that. And you know, and then like there are kids who are being like little girls who are like getting their first period, and their moms are recording it and putting it on the internet, and it's like
performing for the world constantly.
Yes. And it's like those kids are like not getting that money because there's no laws on that. And they're forcing kids to become not only child stars, but like child influencers who are on literally 24/7, where at least child stars in the past were on like as a job.
Right.
And then like got to go home.
Yeah. It's just straight up exploitation.
It 100% is.
That's all it is.
You know? And it's just like, it never ends.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it doesn't. And I honestly just, as I get older, I just care less and less about, I can't tell you the last time I purchased a magazine to read anything about a celebrity because I don't care.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just, you know, I know I've already said this like 3 times, but I just worry about people. I really, really do. They are so entrenched in it. And like, you are being so influenced by these people every day, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
And that can be really dangerous because I think that people, they don't want to think for themselves, and then they get influenced by other people. And, you know, that's all good and fine, but then they don't know why they believe what they believe. And just like, well, this is the popular thing to do, so I'm going to go along with it. You know what I mean? Like, it's very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how we got to this point of the obsession with their personal lives, because that is the problem I have with it.
Yeah.
Is that it's like, you think about, you know, Evelyn Hugo, right?
Yes.
The book, right?
Ugh, such a good book.
Absolutely. And that's supposed to be like 1950s, 1960s, right? That was a time in which there were many open secrets in Hollywood.
Yes.
For instance, like Rock Hudson, the actor, he was gay. Everybody in Hollywood knew it. Nobody in the real world knew. Because it's not the same kind of spotlight.
Right.
That you're constantly under scrutiny and being watched and, you know, all of this stuff. So now people see you in public and they recognize you and, oh, cool, Rock Hudson. But then we don't have cameras on us all the time. So it's just like, well, all right, cool. Well, good to meet you, Rock Hudson. I'm going to be on my way to the grocery store or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like very different. Like, it can't be like that in Hollywood anymore.
No.
Everything is out there.
Well, and I think that like reality TV has done that too. Like, think of the Kardashians.
100%.
Who, you know, their dad was
a criminal defense attorney. Well, actually, I don't even think he did criminal law. He was just friends with OJ, and then OJ was like, be a part of my legal team.
Yeah. And so, but because that was such a televised event, you know, he made a lot of money doing that and like became very well known for that. And I don't think he was like by any means famous. He was just well known.
People knew who he was.
Yes. He was just well known, you know, and specifically because of that case.
Yes.
But then, you know, he passed, and Kris Jenner, she really was working it, you know, using that to her advantage. And, you know, honestly, good for her. She got her bag, you know, whatever. But like, the Kardashians are famous for being famous because they got a reality show and Kris Jenner turned it into
an empire.
Yeah. Yes. Which, like, you know, I mean, I'm not going to like shit on the Kardashians because it's not like they didn't put the work in. Those girls had to have their lives televised.
Yeah, they did.
And they have started multiple brands, whether you like the products or not.
Right.
They did put the work in. Like, one of them models, one of them has lip gloss, and one of them has underwear, and one of them has, I don't know, jeans and all sorts of crap. You know, they do all sorts of crap, and they've done stuff with it. So good for them. But then also like, their still lives are like still televised, which I can't even believe because
even to this day.
But they had like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but then they had like Kourtney and Kim take Miami and the Hamptons and, you know,
spin-offs.
Yes, they went like 1,000 places and they opened stores and they did all of these things. So they really got their bag. But also like when they first started out, like Kim Kardashian would like call the paparazzi on herself.
Yes.
To be like,
Kim Kardashian's going to be at, you know, XYZ place.
Yes. To help get herself famous.
Psychotic.
It is. It's wild. And
who would want that? Just not me. I guess.
Not me. I've always said like, if I were to like accidentally become famous, I would like get the money and then I would disappear.
Yeah. Cut and run. Yeah. No, I don't want to be followed and scrutinized for the rest of my life.
No.
Sounds horrible.
Yes.
So
that
was a big, long tangent, but I loved it. It was such a good conversation.
Yes.
But let's talk about in an awful world, whether you think we'd have celebrities or not.
I think that with the rise of any sort of technology, we would. Because eventually you're just going to be like, oh my God, this person's so cool.
Right.
And like, you know, kind of like in Mean Girls, Regina George. I saw Regina George wearing army pants and flip-flops, so I bought army pants and flip-flops. So like, I mean, people are just always influenced by other people.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to see someone and be like, oh my God, her outfit was so cool. And like, I want an outfit like that. I want to
look like that.
You know, that kind of stuff. So I think in like some sense, yes.
Yeah.
But I do not think we would have celebrityism the way that we have it now.
I completely agree with that sentiment because I think that, you know, again, how much technology are we going to have? I don't know.
Right.
It's not looking great.
No, it's really not.
So I think, yeah, like maybe more in local communities than there are like famous people like that. And, you know, people who, like you said, like are fashion icons, like, oh, she's dressing really cool. I want to dress like that. Like, you know, but I agree. It doesn't get to the level of, you know, we want to know all about their personal lives and, you know, people are following them around constantly trying to get information from them or pictures of them or whatever. Yeah. But I also think that like, we're just not the kind of people that are like so enamored by that we just are like starstruck over it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where we're just like, oh my God, like, you know, I've met famous people before. I'm sure you have, in maybe sometimes.
Well, I've met sports people.
Okay.
But I don't care about sports.
Right. So it's a little bit of a different vibe for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough.
I've seen Daniel Craig walk by and I said, hi.
Yes. My point was going to be that I've met famous people before. A couple, like I won a contest one time and I got to meet Carrie Underwood, but that's a little bit different than like an organic type meeting, right? But one time my mom and I, we were, you know, in the JW Marriott downtown and the former head coach of the Colts was in line in front of us. And so I leaned over and I was like, that's Jim Caldwell. And mom's like, oh my God, it is. And we kind of back and forth, should we say something? Yeah. And then we were just kind of like, hey, coach, just wanted to say, like, big fan of yours. Like, it's nice to see you, like, still in our city, blah, blah, blah. That's it.
Yeah. That was lovely.
That was going to be the end of the interaction. And then his wife was like, take a picture with her, like, with my mom. And was like, you're going to take a picture with her. So, like, very sweet, you know, lady of being like, you know, yeah, we'll take a picture, whatever. But I think that would be, like, the kind of interactions for us, right? Like, where it's just like, hey, I'm just a big fan.
Yes.
Just wanted to let you know, you know, impacted my life a lot or whatever. Yeah, I'm very inspired by what you do. Whatever.
Right.
Whatever it may be that you want to say to that person. But I don't think it's the whole, like, I'm going to force you to be friends with me and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to follow you around and I'm going to ask for a picture and all this stuff. Like, I try to be mindful in those situations of just like, that is also just a person.
Yes.
And don't overwhelm them with your shenanigans all the time, you know?
Right. No. Like, I think of like the celebrities who I really admire. And I think if anything, if I met them, I would be like, hi, I'm a really big fan of your work.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know? And then I would be like, I hope you have a great day. I'm so like, sorry if I bothered you.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
But
I think that is the energy that we would be serving in an awful world of just like, there's no Beatlemania in an awful world. Let me tell you. Like, people aren't going to be passing out and screaming.
No.
I don't want any of that. Okay? No screaming.
No.
Please.
I just, and I always think it's funny because, like I just said, I've met famous, like, sports people, and I never know who they are, and I'm sure...
That's good for them.
Yes, I was like, I'm sure that they think it's refreshing because it's always been in, like, retail settings or whatever, and I'm always just as polite to them as I am to the next person.
Anybody else.
Yes.
Right.
And one time I did meet Pat McAfee.
You did.
And in the middle of winter, and he was wearing a sweatshirt with the arms cut off. And I was kind of like, who's this jabroni without a coat in February? And my boss was like, don't you know who that is? And I was like, no. Should I? And she's like, that's Pat McAfee. And I was like, should I put his name in the system?
No.
And she was like, no. And I was like, but then how does he get the warranty? And she was like, he doesn't care.
No. He's got millions of dollars.
And I was like, oh, okay.
No, Pat.
Next.
I've met Pat a few times, and he is a very nice, or he was when I met him one time in passing in the stadium, and he stopped and took a picture with me, which I thought was very nice. But yeah, and like similar, like obviously we both worked in a retail store where a couple of IndyCar drivers came in. I'm a big IndyCar fan. I go to the race every year, and one year an IndyCar driver and his wife walked in, and I just, for the most part, pretended I didn't know who they were while I helped them and then help other people, whatever. And then when they came to buy the bag, I said, it's Becky, right? And she's like, how do you know that? And I'm like, well, I know that, you're in Hallmark movies, and I know that he drives, that it's cool to meet you guys, whatever. And that was it. That was the end of the interaction. Thanks for coming in. Enjoy your bag. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I think that is in those organic type meetings. I think it's much more like polite to be like that and to not like lose sight of the fact that they are people and you need to treat them as such. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Instead of just in the swarming and
I used to work front desk at a hotel, and a lot of athletes here in the city would have like their family's birthday parties in like the big rooms at the hotel. And normally it was like guys from the kitchen would be like running out to like sneak a peek, and then they'd come up to me and be like, oh my God, do you know who that is? And I would be like, a very tall man.
I have no idea who that is.
And they were like, this is lost on you. And I'm like, yes,
it totally is. Oh man. Yeah. That's so funny.
They're like, this is not helpful. Like, you are not enjoying this the way I would. And I'm like, he was very lovely. I don't know.
I got to chat with him. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'll never forget the time I met Larry Bird. That was awesome.
That would be cool.
I was carrying a cutout of another Indianapolis athlete for reasons we don't need to get into, but I literally physically ran into Larry Bird with this cutout in my hand, and he said, "That's not me." And I was like, huh? And then he walked away, and I was like, I said to the hostess, "That was Larry Bird." And she's like, "It was." I was like, "Okay, I'm just making sure we knew that." And she's like, "Yeah, he comes here sometimes." Okay, cool. That's great. All right. Anyway, yeah. So I think, same thing, that we would be like respectful of people's, like, I have a lot of respect for what you do, like, for your art.
Yes.
Right.
But I do think that, like, I totally understand how gossip columns become a thing, because you want to, like, the people that you admire, you want to think that they're nice people.
You do.
And so then when someone's such a jerk, then you're like, oh.
I know.
So then
that is, yes.
So then when you like find out, then you like tell your friends and you're like, oh my God, so-and-so is such a jerk.
Right.
And then
everyone's
like, oh, kind of a thing. And so you get how like gossip columns become a thing.
But it's like, what an unhealthy belief to be like, oh, because I like this person's art, that they're like, I'm going to like them as a person.
Right.
No.
Right. But I feel like I would just be like, oh, so-and-so's an ass. And then just like move on with my day. But I'd be like, that's a bummer, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Because like there are people whose music and stuff that I like, or like I enjoy their movies or shows that they're in or whatever. But then I'm like, oh, I hear they're a real jerk in real life. Like Chevy Chase is just like very well known to be a jerk.
I know, and I hate that.
I know, because
he's so funny.
Yes, I love like a bunch of stuff that he's in. And so then it's just kind of like, oh, that's a bummer.
I know.
And then you move on with your day.
Right.
The end.
Yeah. That's true. You can't, because if every time a celebrity did something that you didn't like or didn't agree with, and you just like stopped listening to their music or stopped watching their TV shows or whatever, you would never watch it or listen to anything.
No.
Because they're all people. And they are flawed like us.
Exactly.
They're just like us.
Wow.
It's like COVID. We're all in the same boat. Bitch, you're on a yacht in the middle of the Mediterranean. I know.
When Ellen was like, it's like being imprisoned. And we're like, and you're like 10,000 square foot home.
Yeah. Oh, I feel so bad for you.
When I'm in my 1 bedroom, 800 square foot apartment with my husband
about
and
to
our
murder
cat.
somebody.
Like,
yes.
And I'm like, and we haven't left in 6 days.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. We're all in the same boat.
And I'm like, I'm taking the bar on my computer that I just spilled a full glass of water on, and the police keep coming to my door for
God knows what
for
reason.
no reason. And it's the same,
it's
Ellen.
The same for you and I.
Yeah.
No, money buys a lot of things.
Yeah.
A lot of comfort.
A lot of luxury.
Yes, it does.
Yes. They're like, money doesn't buy happiness. And I'm like, well, it does to a certain extent.
It does, yeah.
Because it buys you
things that make you happy.
It buys you things that make you happy. And it just buys you like sustainability.
Yeah, that's true.
You
don't have to worry about things.
Yes, your bills are covered.
Right.
You're like, if you get sick, you're taken care of. You know where your next meal is always coming from. And not everybody has that luxury.
That's very true.
So money does buy happiness to an extent.
Yes, I agree with that sentiment.
Something that celebrities, I think, could remember sometimes.
Oh.
But people who are like heirs and heiresses don't get that because
they don't.
Never learned that.
And if you feel that kind of rage and you're listening, we highly encourage you to go listen to the classic pop punk song, Lifestyles of the Rich and the Famous. They're always complaining. If money is such a problem, they've got mansions. Think we should rob them. It's a great song.
It is.
Check it out.
Fantastic.
It's Good Charlotte, right? Not Simple Plan. It's Good Charlotte.
I think it's Good Charlotte.
Yeah, it's Good Charlotte. Yes. Okay. Well, do you have anything else to say about celebrities?
No, I feel like...
God, I've said my piece on celebrities.
I know. I feel like we really covered a lot of ground today.
We did. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about celebrities in this day and age. So that was a very fun conversation.
It was.
And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed talking about it. Hey, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/anawfulworldpodcast. Got a couple tiers. You can get some cool things. You can drop us some thoughts. You can give us topics. You can also comment on stuff on Instagram, Facebook. If you want us to talk about something in particular that you've been thinking about, let us know. And remember, we drop a new episode every Friday, so you can check us out then. But until then, we hope your day is simply awful.